It's going to be interesting to see how. Are you all finished your college?
Huh? I was able to get a visitor flight. It says 2 hours, I'm assuming that's fine. So they just pulled in there.
You want to sit up here at the state and federal? You've got a name tag.
Special table.
You might be sitting alone.
What is it? No, I'm not.
He doesn't get table, he's got a good
I don't want Department of Health. I think I'll sit back.
All right. It's a light crowd. Where's everybody at? Live streaming. Well,
Hey man, I could sit in my pajamas. Do you in front of me at home? Not right now.
we're recording it. We'll post it later.
Matt, you think I need it? I grabbed the visitor parking spot.
Hello?
I don't want to answer it.
Hello?
Hi, we're about to get
Hello,
started. Who is
anybody there?
this?
Oh, there it is. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Policy Board, Perdido, Pensacola Perdido Bay Estuary Program. It's Wednesday, March 20th, 2019. And we are not streaming it live, but we will be recording this meeting for future playing. Appreciate the Board of Commissioners of Escambia County allowing us to use their dais. And I'm going to turn it over at this time to Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just as a reminder, if you could please utilize your microphone as we are recording this meeting, so we can make sure everybody hears and everybody on the phone hears as well. For introductions, we have a couple of new members. One is in attendance with us. Woody Speed is taking over Mayor Kennan's appointment for City of Orange Beach, taking over for Philip West. So Woody, thank you for being here and welcome. And City of Gulf Breeze has appointed Councilman J.B. Schluter to the policy board. He cannot be here today, but he hopes to be involved in the next meetings as well. So I just wanted to give you that update. And then down here at the table to my right.
John, are you still there?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, I was wondering, I didn't hear anything after she said call to order, so I wanted. You are
No,
unmuted.
you're hearing the same thing I am. I heard.
We don't have ghosts here, I don't think. But to the table to my right, we have our state and federal agencies. We have Louvie with the Florida Department of Health, and we have John Bowie with the EPA Gulf of Mexico program. So just wanted to give you that update.
All right, thank you, Matt. And I'm going to start to my right of the dais and let everybody please introduce themselves.
Ann Hill, City of Pensacola, City Council.
All right, we'll skip back one.
Oh, I thought he was already introduced, sorry.
Woody Speed with City of Orange Beach.
Thank you, Woody.
Dave Peach, Santa Rosa County Commissioner, District 4.
Robert Bender, Escambia County Commissioner.
Charles Gruber, Baldwin County Commission.
All right, and I'm Bob Cole, Santa Rosa County Board of Commissioners. And this time now we'll move to item number 3, which is staff updates. Matt?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since our last meeting, the interlocal agreement has been approved by the Baldwin County Commission. So, Commissioner Gruber, we thank you and your board for approving that. And with their approval, we are now an official organization and body. I've had some conversations with Commissioner Gruber and Dan Deely, representing Baldwin County. They have had some communications with some smaller communities in Baldwin County that wish to be involved. So maybe at a future policy board meeting, we may have a discussion regarding getting them involved in the estuary program as well. That is my quick update on the interlocal agreement. As far as office space is concerned, we've talked about this at almost every policy board meeting, I believe. Escambia County staff has been looking at facilities we have available. One office that we thought would be available does not appear to be, at least not at this time. So we are continuing to evaluate any office space that comes up. And so I would ask if any policy board member or if anybody in the audience knows of any space, we'd gladly look into it. So please reach out to myself or Chips.
Matt, how many square feet were we looking for?
We're looking around 4 offices and a conference room. So.
All right, thank you. What else we got?
The last item on staff updates is the legislative appropriation request. So you may recall at a previous policy board meeting we discussed Escambia County on behalf of the estuary program put forward a $500,000 appropriation request to establish a mini grant program for the estuary program, and so that would fund pilot projects through neighborhood groups, homeowners associations, NGOs, and the like for pilot projects that help implement the CCMP or help us get to our goals of the estuary program. And so that is moving through the House and Senate at this time. The House Agricultural and Natural Resources Appropriation Subcommittee approved that. They gave a favorable rating on that a couple weeks ago. So now it is sitting in committee waiting to be heard. And I believe Senator Broxton has filed it in the Senate as well. And I should say that this is actually a regional effort. The other two Northwest Florida estuary programs, Choctawhatchee Bay and St. Andrew St. Joe Bay, have put forward similar requests. And I'm working with the staff from those programs to really make sure we make this a regional effort. So it's the benefit of all Northwest Floridians and not just one county.
Now, would can you get us the House and Senate bills numbers on that? And would it do any good for us? You know, we in Escambia County both have lobbyists, you know, in Tallahassee for them to track those bills.
Absolutely.
See what we could do. So if you'll get those for us. And now
Absolutely.
when you say all the counties, now will they be all separate bills, or we going to do a combined House and Senate bill and try to move a certain amount for each county within the same bills?
Right. In our discussions with House staff, we had initially packaged it with all three estuary programs. It was House staff's recommendation that they be split out. Now, we do hope in conversations with House members and senators that we can repackage those in the final appropriations bill. But that funding would come directly to the estuary program board, and we could set up the structure as to how that funding is allocated or dispersed. So if that's a mini grant program, we can set up those parameters for that.
Well, if you'll get those bill numbers to us.
Absolutely, I'll be happy to get those to you. And I do have one other staff update if we're good on this item. Okay. Last Friday, the Florida Trustee Implementation Group for NRDA, or the Natural Resources Damage Assessment, released their final Restoration Plan 1 for Florida, and that included 23 projects totaling $61 million, essentially covering Perdido, the Perdido watershed, mainly to the Suwannee River watershed, and then also in Charlotte Harbor. But there are 10 projects totaling more than $16 million that will benefit the Perdido and Pensacola watersheds. Those include projects for Carpenter's Creek, which is in the city of Pensacola in Escambia County. It includes the Perdido River and Paddle Trail, which is a joint effort between Alabama and Florida. It includes funding for planning and design for dirt road paving in northern Escambia and Santa Rosa counties, and nutrient reduction as well for those areas. So it's quite a list of projects, and great things are already happening in the watershed. So.
When you talk about nutrient load and stuff, does any of this tie in with the city of Milton's efforts to get the effluent out of Blackwater?
From the NRDA funded list this cycle, I don't believe it does, although I understand that's moving forward in maybe in the legislature.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Nope, I'm
That's
good.
it. All right. We have action items today. Under item number 4, action items, is approval of January 16, 2019 minute meetings, and you have that in your backup. Any members of the board see any discrepancies or any changes that need made to the January 16th meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes
Have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, so carries. Item B is ratification of previous board actions. This is to recommend the board ratify all actions taken at previous board policy meetings. And I think, Matt, can you kind of give me a rundown of those actions, or the board, please?
Sure. The language in the interlocal agreement stipulates that the estuary program isn't official until all parties have signed, and now that Baldwin County has done so, we just need to go back and ratify all the actions that the board has previously taken, just at a safe measure.
Is there anything that pops right out we need to discuss as far as actions?
No, sir. If somebody would just make the motion to ratify all actions at the previous meetings, then that suffices our need.
All right. Motion
So moved?
Got a motion and a
Second.
second? Okay. Motion and a second to ratify past action taken by the policy board. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Seeing none, it passes. Item C is establishment of the Economic Committee. This is to recommend the board approve establishing an economic committee as provided by the board in bylaws and the interlocal agreement. Matt?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. You may recall that in the proposal to establish the SJ program, we outlined 4 different committees. The Technical and Education Committee have already been established. There has been interest in establishing the Economic Committee, so with your approval, this would get that up and running. And the purpose of the Economic Committee is to really get businesses and industry engaged in the program.
Going to be a very necessary committee. Do we have a list of names or volunteers or?
I believe Jeff Helms with Moffett and Nickel has volunteered to help spearhead that, and we've had some communications with DRBJ with TNC, and he's reached out to First Place Partners. So it's definitely just getting the word out there, and any assistance that the policy board or members here in attendance can provide would be greatly appreciated.
All right. Any comments from members of the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Matt, as we talked yesterday, I said we just need to make sure that we get this moving and get outside companies involved and interested in what we're doing here, because it does play an impact in our communities. And I know we talked about a few different companies that may show some more interest than those that already have, but of course want to get this up and running, provided it passes as quickly as possible, and hopefully getting them to get their friends and business associates on board as well. Thank you. So that's gonna fall back on who?
To establish the committee?
To establish the committee, yes, sir.
That'll be myself for right now. But once we get a list of volunteers, and Jeff Helms from Moffett Nickel has volunteered himself to serve as one of the co-chairs, we'll make sure that he's engaged in all of these of what you just said.
Sure.
And make sure we have outreach to those companies.
All right. Well, thank you for taking this on and leading this effort.
Sure, absolutely.
And Matt, just sitting here, I thought of somebody that may be very interested in getting involved in this. I don't know how much community involvement they've done in the past, but I would think Joe Patty would have a big interest in quality of the seafood and oysters in our area. So maybe somebody we want to bring on board, or at least extend an invitation to.
Absolutely. Be happy to.
Right. Anything else? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make the motion to approve the committee then, if that's what.
Yep. Please. Okay, I have a motion to approve the Economic Committee. Do I have a second?
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Seeing none, it passes. All right, item D is Estuary Program Director Interview Shortlist. This is on page 9 of your backup. Get to that. All right, I appreciate the folks that took or were involved in coming up with that short list. I know it probably took a lot of hours to get to that, and thank you very much if you're here in the audience or you get the message. Thank you very much for your time and involvement in that. You have the background in front of you as far as what the policy board has done to date. I'm not going to read all the way through that, but if there's, Matt, is there where we got to go from here?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I'll just briefly recap what's in that background for all the policy board members. You'll recall with previous policy board action was to establish this shortlisting committee to vet the applications received for the estuary program position. The position closed on January 13th. 38 applications were received. The committee scored each one of those. That's a lot. That is a tremendous amount of work. So from a staff position, we really appreciate the committee taking on that effort. The committee met the end of January, early February, to determine how many applicants to shortlist for interviews with the committee. They determined they would interview the top 7. They held interviews through teleconference on February 28th and March 1st, with the top 6 as one of the 7 that was originally shortlisted removed her name from the pool. And on March 1st, after the last interview, the committee members discussed how to proceed with providing you all with their recommended number of applicants to provide to you all. And you'll recall that the previous policy board direction was to provide 3 names. However, there was a majority of the committee members felt that there were two strong or two standout candidates, and there wasn't necessarily a third applicant that they would classify as strong or stand out from the other applicants. So what you'll see on your screen before you on that PowerPoint slide is just the breakdown of how it went. 6 committee members only recommended 2 applicants be interviewed by the policy board, Lindsay Cross and Jim Trafilio. 1 committee member only recommended Lindsay Cross. 3 committee members recommended 3 applicants, Lindsay Cross, Peter Hoare, and Jim Trafilio, and 1 committee member recommended 3 applicants, Lindsay Cross, Dana Morton, and Jim Trafilio. So the discussion and direction we need from the board today is to determine how many applicants you all would like to shortlist for interviews with the policy board. Would it be those top 2 or top 3 or some other direction? And I know Woody was on the committee, as well as Commissioner Underhill. Commissioner Underhill could not be here today due to he's on military orders. So I don't know if Woody, if you had anything you wanted to say to it.
Yeah, I'll just add that there was a lot of time put into this and a lot of deliberation from the committee, but there were standouts, and the 2 that stood out rose to the top, and they're represented here. So I think the discussion was that, if the first 2 were to decline the position, then that third individual, we didn't feel like, the majority of us didn't feel like it was, would be appropriate to run the program. So that's the logic behind just the 2 recommendations for the majority.
I spoke earlier with Matt, and if we had like 10, 11, and maybe 9, but I see quite a bit of spread there. So, and the work that went into this, I don't have a problem with it, sir.
I'd just like to say, I think, the 2 top candidates, I think we need to recommend them, Lindsay Cross and Jim Trafilio. I think those would be the 2 candidates that would be the top to interview and see if they're interested in, like I say, if you have both of those declined, and you still have Pete Hoare that, could be looked at also, so.
Matt, what's the process, or did they recommend a process if 1 and 2 didn't take it? Are we going to re-interview?
There was some discussion on that, and whether to go back to the pool of applicants that had already submitted, or to go back out and re-advertise the position. I would think that would need to come from the policy board and give that direction to the committee.
Okay, all right.
If it comes to that.
Sounds good. I appreciate, again, all the work that went into this. I'm ready to move forward. We need to set a date for interviews? Or?
That is on my next slide here.
Okay.
Of course, it is somewhat dependent on the applicants being available to come over. And it takes us approximately 2 weeks, because we do have to advertise these meetings as being in our sunshine. So I would say somewhere in the 2 to 3 next 2 to 3 weeks, we would look to that.
All right. I'm going to be out of town the first week of April.
Okay.
My daughter's expecting our 12th grandchild, so
Wow. Congratulations.
thank you. But any other time should fit well for
Okay.
me. And if you'll give the applicants and us like a window we
Sure.
can work with, we can kind of narrow it down a little bit. So
Sure.
work for everybody.
Was that a recommendation? I would like to have the
Okay.
Yeah.
guidance and recommendation.
Discuss a little bit
All right.
if we have,
Right.
and you asked the question I was going to ask is if 1 and 2 don't accept, then what's our next step? And do we need to, do you need to go ahead and have that recommended as well so that you don't have to wait for another board meeting to either re-advertise or,
Sure.
you know, I mean, you know, Peter did get a few votes, but if you're saying that, you know, again, we can see there's a little bit of a difference, but that the board felt that he would not be able to meet the duties, then I think we would need to say that we need to re-advertise.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay.
Re-advertise?
And if, it certainly wouldn't hurt to have that recommendation now as well.
Okay.
It saves us some time.
All right, put that in form of motion, please, sir.
Yes, sir. I move that we schedule interviews with Lindsey Cross and Jim Trafilio for as soon as practicable, and that if both candidates decline the position, that we re-advertise the position.
I have a motion, in
I'll
effect.
second the motion.
All right, motion and a second. Any comments, questions? Sir. All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries.
Great. And Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just a few more items on the logistics. So you have that slide in front of you. I will certainly reach out to you and/or your staffs to look at dates. But as far as the interview process itself, we are planning to do those in person. This Escambia County Board Chambers is certainly open and would we very much welcome it being here because we can record and stream the meeting hopefully. Is there any preference to the duration for each applicant? The committee had a 45-minute block for each applicant, and we ran into timing issues as that quickly took up a lot of time as there were 11 committee members there that each had a question. So it might be beneficial to have an hour or an hour and a half block.
Why don't we do an hour per person with a 30-minute break in between? That way, if we go over a little with the first, we can have some allowance for the second.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. We, you know, being on the committee, we ran into some technical difficulties a couple times that kind of put us in the time crunch. So,
Sure.
you know, I'm not saying we're going to run into that again, but it's nice to plan.
Absolutely.
You know.
Okay.
And during the interview process, it wasn't streamed at that time, correct?
It was utilizing Zoom, which is basically Skype. So
Okay.
the applicants, they weren't in-person interviews. They were
Okay.
through Skype.
Okay. Would they be personal, or these two would be?
In-person interviews
In-person,
is what
okay.
we request. Yes, sir.
Right.
The next item on your slide there regards interview questions. The committee directed staff to come up with 4 standard questions, and then they each asked their own unique question to each applicant. That process went very well. So it's up to the policy board if you would like to follow suit with what they did, or you have another recommendation.
We again talked about this earlier. I'd like standardized questions, but if you could change them up a little bit, because they've had practice now with the answers.
Right.
So we could change them up a little bit, and then I think policy board members should be at liberty to ask as many questions as they like of each candidate.
Sure.
Keeping it within time frame and not redundant. So,
Right.
all right. Anybody else?
Do they have a chance to introduce themselves and give their background and history and?
That is what we did with the committee. We gave
Okay.
them about 5 minutes to tell us about themselves. We can certainly do that as well.
I would appreciate that kind of introduction.
Sure. And we will also get the policy board members the applications themselves, so you'll be able to read through those as well.
Anybody else? Any
Yes,
other
sir.
comments, questions?
Just, Matt, regarding dates, it looks like our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for April 17th. I don't know if we want to do it in conjunction with that meeting or do it before, but probably the 9th, 8th or 9th is probably the earliest that we can do it based on Chairman Cole's schedule and or maybe even April 15th.
Sure.
I don't know what other schedules look like, but the other thing is, though, is that our next scheduled meeting is the 17th, which is the Gulf Power Economic Symposium, so I don't know how many people are planning to attend on that, but we may need to move this meeting to accompany that as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Good catch, good catch.
April 17th is also the meeting of the Alabama Gulf Coast Restoration Council, the Commissioner Group, as you see.
All right.
Okay.
Matt, I guess we're canceling the meeting on the 17th.
We will do that.
We'll reschedule.
We will do that, and we will find another time that works best for everybody.
Right. And I like the suggestion, why don't we, hold the estuary council meeting in conjunction with the interviews? It'd make it a long day, but I think it'd be better than 2 days, different days. We can-
Sure.
We can
Absolutely.
cover those bases.
Absolutely.
Not just for us, but everybody that has to attend and would like to attend. The interviews are open to the public, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing, I've got conflicts on Tuesdays. Our commission meetings are on Tuesdays,
Okay.
and we have workshops every other Tuesday. We have a meeting on Tuesday and then the next thing, so Tuesdays are just a bad day for me,
Okay.
as being the chairman of the commission, so.
Matt's making a note of that, so.
Noted.
We certainly appreciate Alabama coming over and joining us. We like having you here, so.
Great.
Okay. What we
And
got
then
next, Matt?
The last item on that slide is just the selection itself. I just want to make sure I have good understanding, good direction from the policy board that after the interviews, assuming both of those applicants accept, is it the policy board's will to discuss and select somebody immediately following those interviews? Further direction, would you like that just to be a simple majority vote of the board for selection?
I'm gonna throw it out there. I think we ought to do it, with just a sheet of paper. Everybody vote, go,
Ballot.
and then you take a ballot count.
Okay. We can
go
absolutely do that.
Go with a majority, first offer. If he declines, second offer to this number 2 guy. And I see a lot of heads shaking up and down yes, so I guess that's the way we're gonna run with it.
Good with
All
that.
right.
All right?
Thank you. I appreciate that guidance.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned earlier, we do have one add-on action item. If
Okay.
now's the appropriate time to do that, we can do this now.
Please.
Earlier this morning, the technical committee met at City Hall. We appreciate City Hall allowing us their facilities. And one of the agenda items that was discussed was the Florida Centers of Excellence. So this is Pot 5 of the Restore Act. The Florida Centers of Excellence is funding a Florida Panhandle Estuary System assessment through a request for proposal number 3. The committee gave direction to staff this morning to recommend writing a letter of support to the Florida Centers of Excellence in support of this project. So I am bringing that to the policy board's attention and consideration. Those proposals are due April 8th, so if we are going to write a letter of support, we need to do it or get approval at this meeting, and I can work with the chairman to draft that letter for signature.
Well, I think in our infancy here, we better take advantage of every way we can reach out, we can. So any other comments, questions?
How would this interface with what we're doing?
Sure, absolutely. So two groups have submitted letters of interest already. One of those is the National Wildlife Federation, and then the other is University of Florida Extension. So that's Dr. Matt Deitch. He comes to a lot of our technical committee meetings, and then Jessica Bibsa with National Wildlife Federation as well. So those two groups have submitted, and the direction provided in that RFP is that whoever is selected has to work with the local community. In this case, it would be the estuary programs for all three programs.
So the information wouldn't be proprietary, they sharing it with us.
Right. The goal is to make sure that this isn't just another plan or report that sits on the shelf, but it's information that goes to assist in the development of our program.
Great. All right. Any other questions about it?
Matt, you and I have spoken recently about potential opportunities for Florida and Alabama to work together, collaborate on projects.
Right.
Would this be one of those opportunities?
I think it certainly could be.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Great.
All right. Okay. Matt, is that it for action items today?
It is. If I could just have a motion to approve writing that letter of support.
Oh, yeah.
Moved.
Thank you.
Motion is second.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Ayes have it. One thing before we get to item number 5, I was just sitting here thinking about, these meetings can get, we're all excited about what we're doing here and what's going on, and, it's in its infancy, and how do we get it rolling, how do we get involvement. I think we ought to have maybe, and everybody help me with this isn't my idea altogether, but, we've got dozens of restaurants that serve oysters. And maybe later, as we get involved into this, have, maybe at one of our beaches or one of our community centers, invite all these restaurants out to serve their main dish, their oyster dish that they, or even fish, whatever, shellfish or whatever they do. Get them out there, tell them, okay, we're going to charge so much a head just to walk through. And kind of like, what made me think about it is Gulf Breeze does the barbecue thing, the Sertoma clubs and different things like that. And not just as a fundraiser, perhaps for the program, but for awareness. We can get people out and get them involved because everybody likes to come out and have some shellfish or oysters. We get the community involved and then have a booth there where we're selling this program to the public and getting people involved and say, well, if you still want to enjoy this seafood, we need you to encourage maybe the people you work for. Maybe somebody will come out that works for Sandy Sansing or works for Louis Bear or somebody that says, hey, I went to this thing. These guys, have this estuary program. You don't know. You never know until you try something. But, it'd be one thing I think could bring a lot of light to this program and something maybe we could work on as we get things rolling. So just throw it out there. Nothing we got to vote on or suggest today, but I'd like everybody to be thinking about it. So.
I'd be happy to help anyway on Pensacola Beach, but maybe even, we have gallery night downtown, I think once a month. So even something like that would maybe get 1, 2, 3 chefs to come do that to broaden the awareness of what we're trying to do. We could set up right here in front of possibly I have to check on logistics, but again, I mean, there's a lot of people that come down on those evenings that are walking by, and so.
And it's going to take time. We're going to have to get a pamphlet developed, get some information out there, kind of. It's something I'd like to maybe by this fall be able to start incorporating into some. As we get the economic group set up and the awareness group, the education group set up, that's one way to do it without it just being sitting in another meeting type thing.
Right. No, that's a great suggestion, and we can certainly punt that to the education or the economic committee. And I'll just add it would be worthwhile to reach out to Visit Pensacola to get them involved in the program. They have a lot of connections and could definitely help in this event and others.
And it can be done, on individual, as there's events, maybe booths set up, but, maybe at some point in time have an event just for that type things.
Absolutely.
Just kind of see how it evolves.
Visit Pensacola, I don't know when their grant cycle ends. It's not too much left if it is still open, but they have events that they actually give grants for. I would check with them. This would really be good.
Great. Thank you.
Well, even tourist development, TDC funding, some of that could be set aside for it, because I think tourists are attracted to our seafood as much as our beaches, probably.
Right.
All right?
Very good.
All right. All right, we'll move on now. Presentation time. Santa Rosa County Community Resilience. I can't read this without my glasses, excuse me. Index Pilot Project. Cynthia, you're here? Where you at? There
Sir,
you are.
I'm
Hey,
here.
Cynthia. Okay,
Matt,
Cynthia,
will I get you to do
floor.
the slides for me?
I absolutely will.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm Cynthia Cannon, and Santa Rosa County participated in a community self-assessment this past December. This was a pilot project, and this was done in partnership with the Louisiana Sea Grant. And because it was a pilot project, we pretty much focused on a small area. We targeted Pace, Florida, to do this. And great. So this is kind of your first step, your first exercise before you even get to the workshop. And this is of value in and of itself, is to go pull together and update your public-private partnerships. This is just a small snapshot of who we had there. There are probably 30 or 40 plus names when you start trying to target who your stakeholders are that need to be there, and just updating those names, because I know if you're going to try to find your cell phone contacts in a post-disaster event or reach those guys, it's going to be incredibly difficult to do. So just now having this list, I mean, with us, it's going to be obviously easier for our sheriff and fire department that we're talking to all the time. But even there's turnover and change and people move. So again, this was a small snapshot of who was there. So we did do a small group. You do want to max this at about 25 people if you can. That small geographic area turned out to be a great idea. You're going to get more value out of doing it that way. What made it a pilot project was Texas A&M joined this effort with Louisiana Sea Grant, and they brought in these interactive mapping tools. So it's a real live study. So while you're interacting with this community and you're getting this input, you're identifying your critical facilities, your evacuations route. You're talking, you're live, and you're building it on these maps, a series of them right away. And then they're also bringing in different storm surge data too. So you can run a lot of scenarios, and that's part of what made this a pilot project. Note, this is an internal evaluation tool. We want to stress this. This isn't a process that's going to allow you to go out and compare yourself to another community once this is done. This is truly for you to evaluate internally. The facilitators with the Louisiana Sea Grant did continually stress to us that the discussion versus score, yes, you are going to get a score on how you rate at the end of the day, but what's important is your discussion. It carries a lot more weight than that as far as your final report, which is your deliverable in that one. So the purpose of the self-assessment is your resilience index high, medium, or low. So after just telling you it doesn't matter, it does. But the question that we asked first when we go in there, and a reporter asked me this when we were getting ready to do this pilot project, she said, what does resilience mean? And it's a great question because it makes you think about a word that we use every day now. It's just in our vernacular. This first definition actually comes from the workbook that you're given by the NOAA and the Sea Grant folks when you put on this workshop. And that's more about how well your community organized, your ability to organize post-disaster. The second one is the one I like. I hear it a little more often. I think it simplifies this in talking to large groups of people. How well do you bounce back? You can take that and apply that to a much smaller unit of measurement, say a family, versus your neighborhood that builds your communities and so forth, and what that means to one person. So I know for one family, that's going to be how quickly you get your children back into school. For another family, how well you bounce back might be how soon your revenue streams back in place. So it allows you to all kind of come to the table, bring what's important, and then and weigh on this self-assessment. Next slide. So you're going to build your scenario. You're going to have two scenarios that you, when you start to cross-check against your resilience. So your scenario one, this is a bad storm. You're going to select this from some historical event. So this is based on a past storm. And then scenario 2, this is your future storm. This would be 50% worse than the bad storm. So with both of these scenarios in place, and then you're going to have probably a checklist of about 16 variables per storm that have to do with your wind and water and storm surge and so forth. So that's an exercise in hindsight that I would have had our emergency managers and a few other people, a smaller group, do before they got into the workshop, because not everybody could remember certain, but it didn't ruin it, but that just would add more value to it. So the next slides, we kind of get into these key indicators. We're not going to go through all of these charts. I just want you to see what the group before them has. This is what's put out by NOAA. So your critical facilities. So you're looking at these key indicators, and you're going to determine what's functional after a disaster per each of these scenarios. And then ultimately, you have a report that's built on that, and then you end up with some action items. Again, this is just a clip. We're not going to go through the Pace, Florida area. But it does get very interesting, and you're going to find that there's not consensus on where all these check marks go, if it's a simple yes or no. But that's the beauty, again, of that discussion. That's also the beauty of really targeting an area like this, but you get to focus on critical facilities that might get overlooked in another region of the county. Something that came out of this was locally relevant infrastructure. This is going to be infrastructure like your chain food restaurants. So if you don't have communication in place that you might have expected, where does the community go on a regular basis where you're going to share that information and put your poster board up there? For this group that was doing this workshop, they overwhelmingly chose a Waffle House in Pace. They said you will see everybody there before church, after church, but it's a place the whole community goes through. And if it was still standing, that would be their go-to place to share. But you designate something like this, and that's why it's a great exercise to do in that smaller area, because you're going to have more of these, and you'd want more of those throughout your community. So we can go to the next slide. Same transportation, this is going to be your next module. Again, these key indicators are taking you to where are you going to regain a pre-storm level of service within 1 week. This was a great discussion because it went to the county's debris removal capacity and how many debris contracts are within 1 mile. So this is the kind of questions not many of us would have known to ask, but Brad Baker, our emergency management director, says you start looking at a 100-mile radius of where those contracts exist, and that impacts getting back to that pre-storm level of service within 1 week. So again, that's just a smattering of action items. Continue to look at post-storm traffic management. Since this was the Louisiana Sea Grant group, they are used to dealing with the tiered reentry approach, which Santa Rosa County has not pursued, and Brad made it clear that in his eyes, if we tried to do a tiered reentry, people wouldn't evacuate, and we want you to evacuate. So again, that's why you might lose points on something like this. It doesn't matter. The discussion explains why you're doing what you're doing. You can go to the next slide now, Matt. So this, again, your community plans and all your agreements, are they up to date? So these key indicators are going to take you through more than you see there, but you're going to find out, do you have MOUs in place with your neighboring counties to assist each other in case you need it? Are those fully executed? Just making sure you have all of these key items in date, because you don't want to start dealing with this type of stuff in post-storm. So as much as you can be ahead, you're fine. Mitigation measures. So this audience here knows this better than anyone else. So your shoreline restoration projects, your education efforts, how well are you doing on these key indicator questions as you go down through here? What came out of our discussion was that we need more education on flood maps throughout the county, specifically residents located outside of the special flood hat areas, but who flooded in the 2014. So just more education in some of those key areas. Business plans, what assets do the large retail stores, so Home Depot, Walmart, fuel distributors have to reopen after a disaster? No, we have two points on this, 2 checklists. We didn't have the right people in the room, so that's going to be a low score for us. That shows how difficult it is to get some of these individuals in the room with you, much less for a full day or even a half-day workshop. Going back to something like this, I would just want to target some key individuals from this business sector and have them address this countywide versus trying to come and do multiple workshops. So that would be another lesson learned, and I imagine we would score much higher than we have a gap in information here. And again, this is just for PACE. Social systems, do you have strong faith-based networks in your community? Yeah, that's a solid high for Santa Rosa County. How are your Rotary clubs, your civic groups, and so forth? If these networks are strong, make a commitment to keeping them strong. If you're not sure, that's a gap in information you need to find out. But these were critical also in post-disaster, in times of post-disaster recovery. And then this is my closing slide. So just to take away, again, some CRI program benefits. One, we've talked about it in the beginning, that's your public-private partnerships. Make a commitment to getting that information in place. You know, even our emergency management staff have said, will tell us we grow complacent in keeping something as simple as a contact and phone number, particularly a cell phone number, if those are working on that list, and you don't want to go scrambling for stuff like this. We can do that all year long. You get a final report. The Sea Grant team compiles this report for you. They do a great job, and this becomes, in turn, an excellent resource for grant opportunities down the line. And this is, just a reminder, this is also, it's a quick assessment. So this is not meant to replace the more detailed assessments that you see for FEMA or the FDEP vulnerability analysis. It's part of the goals for your executive director to perform a vulnerability assessment, so this in no way will replace that, but it's a good impetus for, still serves a good purpose. And this last item, we're working with our counterparts at NACO right now to ask them, how can we improve our CIS score by doing these CRI self-assessments? And the answer is positive. They said, okay, well, if you implement some of those action items that came out of that self-assessment, and then the right items, of course, then yes, you could improve your CRS score. So that's a direct correlation to our flood insurance premium, so we'd see a direct benefit from that. The good thing about doing it, so then that conversation led to another conversation. So they said, well, their group's up on the Hill right now with the Financial Services Committee working with NFIP. We want to undertake significant reform. How would you guys like to give us your wish list for that reform? I said, we'd love to. They gave us a 5-day window for that. So after a little further time into that, they said, okay, well, we'll do more of an official announcement out to everybody, give everybody that window and extend that timeline. So everyone should have a letter. If it didn't come today while we're on here, then at least by tomorrow. But if not, I'm happy to follow up with anybody if your community was looking for that opportunity for feedback and wanted to weigh in, because it would be a missed opportunity, I think, if we don't tackle that. So, and that's in closing from me. Thank you. 10 minutes.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just reiterate, how important the CRS really is. We in Baldwin County utilize it, and we're seeing our people that are in the flood-prone areas, because of what we're doing, they're getting a 20% discount on their premiums, which is fantastic. But it's hard to keep that rating. I mean, you really got to do a lot of stuff to keep it. Changing policies, and a lot of work, but it pays off, and we're very proud of that. So.
Anybody else? Well, Cynthia, thanks very much. Appreciate you coming today and doing that. All right, item number 6 will be our committee updates, technical committee update. Do we have one? Of course, if Chip's here, we got a technical committee update. So,
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and policy board members. This morning at our technical committee meeting, we had our elections for new technical committee chairperson and a vice chair. And after 21 years of serving as the chair of the technical committee for the Bay Area Resource Council and now the SUA program, I am stepping down. And I'd like to introduce to you, and many of you already know her, Jessica Bibza was elected unanimously this morning without opposition to be the new chair of the technical committee. Jessica is with the National Wildlife Federation. She's worked extensively with the Mobile Bay Estuary Program as well as the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. She helped us put together the EPA grant proposal that's providing the funding to stand up this new estuary program. So Jessica is going to give you an update on some of the exciting things we talked about this morning at the technical committee meeting, including a workshop that we had on February 28th to start working on the comprehensive management plan that is the main deliverable for this EPA grant. So Jessica, please.
Thanks, Chips, and good afternoon. And now that Chips just did my whole introduction, then, yeah, I'm Jessica Bibza, and as he said, I've been on the BARC since about 2013, the BARC Technical Committee since about 2013, 2014, and I'm also on the Mobile Bay Estuary Program, their CRC, their Community Resource Committee, as well as Tampa Bay Estuary Programs Technical Committee. The vice chair that was elected is Ken Heck with Dolphin Island Sea Lab, and really excited to be able to include some Alabama representation on our TAC leadership team. So I'm going to be doing the best I can to follow in Chip's footsteps of delivering these updates on the review committee. We did have a presentation by the Emerald Coast Clean Water Alliance Coalition. This is a newly forming group with a number of the local NGOs, the folks that do Ocean Hour and the various the Bream Fishermen's Association, the Sea Grant folks that are kind of on the ground doing education, outreach, cleanup activities. They are forming or looking at forming a more structured organization and trying to build their coalition to help support the estuary program efforts. And after the presentation, I think one of the comments that came out of that is that that group could really well feed into the education outreach committee that the estuary program's putting together, the community committee that we'll be putting together, possibly the economic committee that we're putting together. So it looks like there are some good opportunities for synergies, and look forward to seeing how that grows out. As Chips mentioned, we also did an overview of this on February 28th. We had a committee workshop. The goal of the workshop was to really start to put together some of the architecture for a work plan to develop the CCMP. We had little breakout groups around the room and dealt with, brainstormed on issues related to the goals and objectives of developing the work plan, key priorities for it, key issues that should be addressed, what available plans should really be considered in putting together the work plan and eventually the CCMP, and who's missing in the room. And really appreciated your comment earlier, Commissioner Cole, on Joe Patty, because that was actually one that we hadn't realized was missing. The next steps, I think, is we had a lot of information from that workshop to review and process, and we're going to be compiling that, and staff is going to be using it to put together an outline for developing the work plan. Again, just to remind you all that the big job of this estuary program over the next 2 years is to build this CCMP. But first we need a work plan on how we're going to go about doing that. And the idea is to really try to get a little something going, so that way when the new executive director comes on board, they'll have something to kind of get them jump started. Next, we talked about future topics to cover at future meetings. It started with Christian Wagley with the Clean Water Restoration Network. Is Christian here? What's their new name? It is, that's it. What is it? Healthy Golf, I'm sorry, Healthy Golf. I knew that they changed name. Christian was on the City of Pensacola's transition team, and he summarized the environmental actions for that transition team and gave an outline of that. And we thought that that might make a great presentation for the technical committee going forward. And we used that as a springboard to talk about other potential topics for future technical committee meetings. And the idea was that future meetings, why don't we structure them around specific topics and really kind of zero in on key issues. One of the issues, another potential topic that came out was inviting someone from ADCNR to come and talk about what plans have been done and actions have been taken on the Alabama side of the Perdido River. Again, we're really trying to keep that focus across the entire watershed for both water bodies. Let's see. Also, we talked about the Florida Historic Centers of Excellence. Thank you, Matt, for covering that topic. Dates for some upcoming events that I know are usually passed along, sharing with you guys. March 30th is going to be a seagrass meeting and to coincide with Santa Rosa County Seagrass Day. April 4th is going to be the UWF's High School Symposium. And then coming up in June, there's going to be a Gulf of Mexico Alliance meeting in Gulf Shores, Alabama. There are probably some other meetings coming up. We did talk about our next meeting on April 17th, but it sounds like that is going to be changing. So we will have to figure out what that's going to be. Matt and Chips, did I skip anything? No. Any?
Good job.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I think
Chips already did that, but
What's that?
I covered that earlier.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Matt, I did have it on my list, but I thought Matt covered it, but did you want to cover it again? Just again, reminding everybody that Florida's initial NERDA restoration plan was finalized on Friday, and it includes quite a few projects within our Pensacola-Perdido estuary program jurisdiction. So some for Carpenter Creek, sediment in upstream area, a couple projects on the Perdido. Matt, did you want to give another summary? You think we covered it?
I think we've covered it.
Okay, super. Any questions from the board?
Jessica.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for stepping up to that job. You got big shoes to fill. I know. No, literally, he's a big guy. You got big shoes to fill.
You notice how quickly he turned over the responsibilities and duties?
I'm wondering how much lobbying that took to. Chips, thank you for all your years, and I know you're not going anywhere. You're still going to be here with us. So, but thanks for all the years that you provided that leadership in that committee. And Jessica, thank you for stepping up to that, and appreciate it. It's an important committee, and we appreciate all the work that you do. All right. Next, how about the Educational Committee? Who do we have here that's going to educate us today? So.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. The Education Committee has met one time, and since then we've communicated primarily by email. And we do have some action items so far. We plan to have our action plan completed by August, and we have some ideas. We're working on the Escambia and Santa Rosa County Bay Days, which the BARC education team had done for years, and we're going to continue that tradition. We do have some funding from IP, I believe, that's carried over to this group. We also are working on the National Estuaries Day project. And Commissioner Cole, when you were talking about the seafood, that might be a good day to celebrate seafood estuaries in the Perdido Pensacola Bay Estuary Program also. In addition, to some other ideas, possibly maybe incorporate it onto a ferry ride and have seafood and everything, and it be a fundraiser also. We're going to come up with a calendar of events, and we're working on a Pensacola Perdido Estuary Program information presentation. We have Sam's working on it, and Marcy and Kristen also, and it'll be something that we can present to different groups and organizations to kind of tell about, what we're doing and who we are and how we came about also. And then, like Jessica mentioned too, we had this opportunity today to work with the Emerald Coast Clean Waters Coalition, and we really do feel like that's a really good combination with our education group, and then working with this committee too, and bringing in NGOs, and then also the community volunteers too. And I think that's pretty much about it. Any questions?
Right.
Okay, great.
Thank you
Thanks.
for your report. And let's see where we're going from here. All right, we got some supporting agencies updates.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just real quick, this is an item that staff would like to keep as a standing item on all future policy board meetings to allow our state and federal partners the opportunity to give you an update on their activities in the area, and as well as the opportunity for you to ask them questions. I believe today we only have 2 with us. It is 3. It is spring break, so whoever wants to go first, by all means, John or Luvi or Crystal.
Okay. Anybody?
Okay, Crystal. Okay.
All right. All right. No little star on your foreheads today. No, that's it. Okay. All right. Well, we'll look forward to future reports and keeping us up to date. I'm going to add one thing here. NACO was mentioned earlier. That's the National Association of Counties, and there's a big concern, and there's a subcommittee. I sit on the Energy, Environment, and Land Use Committee. I've been past chair of some of the subcommittees and intend to lobby to be chair of that entire committee over the next few years. But there was a small group stood up, and it may be a subcommittee under that EELU that has concern with, basically it's the 5 Gulf states and concern over the health of the Gulf. And I'll kind of keep it's just kind of fresh. I'll have to get with Julie Uffer and get some more information on that. I said in that meeting, they've already selected a chair and a few chair helpers, co-chairs on it. And so it was just kind of in its infancy, some discussions. It started out about parks and trails and waterways, and then it kind of overlapped and grew into this concern that all 5 states that were affected by the BP oil spill, they're growing and ongoing concern for the entire health of the Gulf, which, our tributaries and creeks and rivers and estuaries are feeding right into. So I'll keep that, as I hear more about that or the development of that, I'll keep you up to date on it. So, all right, we'll move on now to number 8, which is a policy board member update. That was my update. Anybody else have an update?
I was going to say, I know the Florida Association of Counties is putting together, what's the official title of it, Matt?
It's the Water Policy Committee.
Water Policy Committee, thank you. That's meeting this Thursday that I think is also looking probably similar ways, and of course, we also have the Gulf Consortium that we can, that looks at the water quality of the Gulf of Mexico and ways to improve that. One thing I wanted to say is, thank you for your efforts on getting the NERDA money for Carpenter Creek. That does play such a vital role in our waterways going into Bayou Tahar and then Pensacola Bay. So look forward, and also all the volunteers that I think there was a cleanup day last weekend or sometime in the last week and a half or so that really cleaned up the waterway, and I think the efforts that have been made over the last few years are starting to, we're starting to see the positive effect of those efforts. So, of course, want to recognize everyone that's taking part in that and the efforts that they're doing. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Alabama, you got anything?
Not at this time.
All right. Okay. All right, we'll go on. We'll open the floor now to public comment. Anybody would like to speak from the public? All right, seeing none, then I'll close the floor to public comment. We are still kind of up in the air on our next meeting date at this point.
I'll work with you all and your staff, and we'll get a date set.
All right, that's pending. Anything else for the good of the body? Seeing none, then we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Did somebody leave their phone sitting on the CPAC over there? You're welcome. I don't even know.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, how'd that go? Good, good.
Yeah.
I can tell it kind of went through the cracks at our group.
Thank you for coming over. Oh, yeah. Good seeing you.
Lot going on.
About changing appearance of minutes significantly before.
Legend,
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thanks for the update.